I'm not looking, good at looking too far in the future. Just try to do good every day. That's kind of how we approach it.
And how you view this season? You talked about the expectations coming in with the team that you have and the things that you can do. How do you view this season as opposed to previous years?
Well, I don't really view it any differently. Every day our goal is just to be the best we can be that day, and then come back the next day and be a little bit better. And I think that's the approach you have to take. I think if you look too far down the line or listen to what's going on outside, you make a terrible mistake, and you hamper your ability to be successful. So for us, it's always about narrowing the focus down to what we can control and what matters, and that's what we're doing that day. And I know that sounds very cliche and it's boring, and nobody wants to hear it, but it's the truth. It really is the truth. And what's fun for me, exciting for me, is that our players have embraced that philosophy. I don't think that when you get around our team, you hear them talking about the outside expectations or the long-term goals. They talk about the process, the grind, going to work every day and being great. And so that gives you hope as a coach when you feel your players start to take on the same mindset that you have and that you want them to take on.
You've been monitoring the temperatures in San Bernardino?
I hope it's hot. What is it, Tracy?
107 or something.
Good. We can be. I just would like us to be in triple digits. As long as we're in triple digits, I'll be happy. No, the San Bernardino heat is just I guess it's a plus. The reason we go there is not because of the heat, it's because it gives us a chance to get into an environment where there's fewer distractions, where we're isolated, where we can focus on each other, get to know each other better, build those bonds that you need to help you through a season, overcome some adverse environment, climate. But I like the weather. I like it hot. I think it's good for us.
Are you planning the San Diego retreat again prior to camp?
Retreat? That's a nice 3 days with the SEALs, a retreat? No, we're going right to San Bernardino, and we're going to get to work. We've done that. You can't do it every year. It loses its impact. And I thought it was incredibly productive for us last year. I think it helped us get through a lot of really difficult times. Most specifically the death of Nick Pasquale, but it's time for us really just to go up there and just start practicing football and becoming the best football team we can become.
How much more can you trust Brett this year after 3 years in the offense?
I have a lot of trust in Brett, and I think our team and our coaches have a lot of faith that he's going to do the right thing. And the reason is because he's put the work in. He just doesn't show up and kind of wing it. He's had a great off season. He's invested a lot of time in his craft, and he understands this offense now. He understands his capabilities. He knows the players around him a lot better, and so when you see a young man work as hard as Brett is and be as invested as he is in this team and in his position, it gives you a great deal of faith in him.
Was there anything different about this offseason compared to the last few with him?
He spent time. He made a conscious decision to try to expose him to some NFL players. He spent time with Phillip Rivers. He spent time, as we all know, with Peyton Manning last week. He spent time with Tim Tebow talking about leadership things, guiding the team. He spent more time in the office, in informal situations, kind of, sitting in Coach Clem's office and just talking about protections, or sitting in Coach Olbrich's office and talking about defense, just so he could have a better understanding of the game. I think, after 2 years in the system, he was able to do that. He understands what we're doing on offense. Now, you can always increase your knowledge, but it's time for him just to expand and learn a little bit more about the rest of the game, and he did a tremendous job with that. I don't even think there's a conference that's close in terms of the quality of the quarterbacks. And that's not to say that they're all going to go be great NFL players, but they're great college football players. Every week you get ready to play a Pac-12 quarterback, and there's a trait that they have that is unique, that is, difficult to defend. And I have great respect for the quarterbacks on this conference. I think many of them will go on and have great professional careers, but it is, to me, I don't think it's even close. I don't think that there's another conference that has near the quality of quarterbacks, and I think there's a lot of great quarterbacks.
Well, talk about your defense.
Well, I'm excited about our defense. Jeff Olbrich takes over as our defensive coordinator. He was our linebacker coach and special teams coordinator the last 2 years. He's a passionate guy with a great knowledge base. He played 10 years for the San Francisco 49ers as a linebacker, so he really understands the player's perspective. He's got great energy, and our players really respond well to him. I think that we've got some depth on defense. We're losing some really good players. 3 guys that got drafted, Cassius Marsh and Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr. So we've got to replace those guys. But we've got our entire secondary basically coming back. I think we've got a pretty good group of linebackers, although, like I said, it'll be tough to replace those 2 guys. And then our defensive line. I think one of the main concerns for me defensively would be how do we replace Cassius and Anthony's productivity rushing the passer, because they were productive, and it didn't always register in the amount of sacks, but pressures and just disruptions and making the quarterback uncomfortable or move out of the pocket. So how do we replace those numbers? And someone's going to have to step up and do it.
How have things changed over the past 2 years? I mean, you can talk about what you want to do with the program, but when kids see what you've done over the past years, when you go to high schools or you can go talk to kids and they've seen what you've done, and how things change when you talk to them because they've actually seen it.
Well, when you're having some success, and our success right now, in my opinion, is still very limited. We haven't won the Pac-12 championship. We haven't we're 0-3 against Stanford. I don't want our players to feel like we're extra special. We've accomplished the goals we set out to accomplish. I think we're on the right track, but I think that there's some. When you have a guy like Brett Hundley, or you've got a guy like Miles Jack, who's kind of a national story. Anytime you can get positive visibility, it helps your recruiting. It helps you when you go into a home and they're familiar with Miles Jack, and maybe you're talking to a player about being a two-way athlete, and other teams are as well, and you can say, well, we can show you 10 guys playing both ways, and other teams do that. And so that's how it helps us.
And you mentioned Stanford. What in your mind has enabled them to separate a little bit, to win 2 in a row the way they have? And what have you learned sort of about what you take to
consistency? I think going from Harbaugh and then staying in-house and going to David, who's a very stable coach, great man, principal. That they are always going to stay true to the type of student athlete they recruit. They have a formula and they stick to their formula, and their formula works. When you play a Stanford team, they're not going to make a lot of mistakes. They're not going to beat themselves. You're going to have to beat them. They're very disciplined. They're very tough. They tackle well. They don't break down in coverage. Their quarterback takes care of the football. Their receivers make great catches. Their runners run hard. They're big and physical up front. So they've got that formula. They've had consistency, and that's what we're striving for: consistency in the way that we do.
There's so many eyes on Brett. What this season makes him more capable of kind of navigating that spotlight than maybe past seasons?
Maturity. He's older. He's more mature. He's played now 2 years. He's been in the national spotlight a little bit more. I think he's prepared himself this offseason very well. I think that when you go spend some time with a guy like Phillip Rivers, and it's not just about sitting down talking X's and O's, but how do you balance your life? How do you prepare during the week to play well on Sunday? How do you balance your obligations to your family and your profession? Now with Brett, it's not necessarily family and profession, but it's school, it's social. It's going to be for him a lot of media obligations, and then we've got to do a good job as a staff of making sure we protect him. Brett's an incredibly mature young man. He's a very gracious and genuine kid, and I think he'll navigate this very, very well. And you know what? He deserves it, and he'll handle it well. He has an ego like we all do, but he has his ego firmly in check.
Any personnel or injury updates? Anything to say?
We lost Austin Roberts to the ACL, but I think that is already public knowledge. And that's unfortunate because he was really doing well in the offseason. He'll be back strong. Just 7-on-7, I guess. I wasn't there. He came down on it wrong. He's going to get surgery. Other than that, nothing right now. I think, I got an injury report a couple days ago, and it looks like we're on track with all the guys that were kind of iffy if they were going to be able to go or not. They all look like they're okay. Simon, Connor, of course, Johnny Johnson's not going to be able to. There were the guys that we already knew that were out. I think those guys that were, right on the bubble, it looks like we're going to get all those guys back. We had a little scare the other day with Justin Combs. The guy tore his muscle, but he didn't, so he's going to be okay as well.
Is Johnny done for the season?
Johnny is done for the season. Yeah, he had to have surgery. It was the second time.
Same shoulder, right?
I think it's a week-to-week proposition. You like balance, but balance doesn't always mean that it's 50-50. You know what I mean? Balance means that if you have to throw the ball to win the game, you can throw it to win. And if you have to run it to win, you can run it to win. I want to be that type of team where we're not one-dimensional. I think that our offensive line, we started 3 true freshmen last year, very young. I think we had a freshman All-American in Simon Boyne who's not even starting right now. So we finally got some depth there. If we can stay healthy, I think that we should be able to run the ball effectively. I think Brett developing as a passer and the receiving core we've got should help us run the ball. And then, Brett, I like when Brett takes off. I count those as runs. Those go in the run yardage. So, but I'd like to be able to, my personality is I'd like to be able to just pound it. And we're getting a little bit closer to where we can do that.
You've talked about your commitment to the program before. You had a chance to go other places you did not. Was that ever close, or what you built here was too hard to leave?
UCLA showed a tremendous commitment to me and trusted me by hiring me. And, I love it there, and I don't want to go anywhere. It's home now. And I want to see us build something special. And so, I'm committed to our university, I'm committed to Dan Guerrero, and probably most importantly, I'm committed to our players. We go recruit these kids, and we go in their homes, we talk to their parents, and we ask them to commit to us, and then you see coaches run out on them. And I don't think that's right. You sit in our meeting rooms, we talk to our kids about being selfless and sacrifice and putting the team first, and then you see coaches when the first opportunity comes up to take off and better their situation, they run and do it, and they leave these kids behind with these, to me, empty lessons, and that's not who I want to be. So I'm staying there until they kick me out. That might be tomorrow. Who knows? But I've been kicked out before, but I'm staying until they kick me out.
Jim, was all that in play? The game wasn't about Washington.
Is that how I felt?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I always feel. I never was going to do UCLA. Dan Guerrero went out of the limb when he hired me. Let's not kid anybody, okay? It wasn't the most popular hire in the history of college sports. I can promise you that. So, he showed a real faith in me, and I appreciate that. I'm a loyal person, and I love it. We're at UCLA. Where else are you going to go? Everyone can argue that. Here. For me, this is the place I want to be.
Is there a level of comfort now, vindication? You talk about Guerrero going out on a limb. You said you're not at the successful point you want to be, but you feel a little bit more vindication or satisfaction now?
Well, no, I don't really live that way. Like I'm not, I don't live in the past. I live in the future. I just live in the present. So I don't.
You just kind of look back at it and laugh.
No, I don't even look back at it. I appreciate it, but I don't waste a whole lot of time on it.
How are you keeping? How are you?
We got a heck of a quarterback. That's what I'm sure professionally do.
How are you keeping your team?
You know what? It hasn't been that hard to do because of the group of young men we have. Their goals, I think, are aligned with mine. Their mindset is like mine, which is, every day has got to be a great day. When you've got a strength and conditioning coach like Sal Wilson, he's got to be the summer and commands and respect that you can get good commands from them. They react to them. It makes it very, very easy. That's one of the things that's exciting for me is that I don't see our kids being distracted. by people coming around. You know, it's one of the reasons I feel comfortable with us doing the drive on the Pac-12 network is that I think we're mature enough now to handle the so-called distraction. So, maybe I'm getting, maybe it's going to be a problem, but I don't think it is.
Have you laid down any ground rules for the drive?
Oh,
You said
any? This.
let's hear some.
I'm very protective of our space, our environment. I think there's a sanctity of the core. Phil Jackson used to talk about your locker room is special. Who you let in to your environment dictates, kind of the climate. So anytime you let someone in a meeting that the players haven't seen, it can change the climate of the meeting. So, initially we'll start with our photographers in there because our photographers are in there all the time. I don't know that people know that, but because of recruiting, because of marketing, you have cameras around you all the time. So our players are used to having cameras follow them 24/7, but they're also used to the faces that are behind that camera. And so initially, until they start to learn some of these other people and see that they are a part of our team, we just have to be diligent about making sure we protect our environment. And then we have full editorial control. So nothing's going to get out there that we don't want out there, or it'll be the last show we do. So.
NFL experience help with managing that kind of stuff now that the exposure is rising on college? I mean,
I don't know. Maybe probably a little bit. There's nothing that the NFL does that's any more significant than that. In my opinion. I just think we have good kids. We have good coaches, and our kids, our young men have. Like I said, they've embraced the mindset that we've asked them to embrace, which is let's take care of today, the business at hand. I'm not saying it's perfect and it's like that every single day, and everyone's, we're like brainwashed, but we're moving in that direction, and that's important.
Do you think there's so much star power on offense, right? With Brett, obviously he gets a lot of attention. Do you think the defense gets overlooked a little bit? I mean, obviously you use AB, but
I wish the whole team was getting overlooked. That's how I look at it. But probably, although Miles brings that star power. But Owa's a heck of a player, and Eric's here today, and Eric's a heck of a player. And the way Anthony Jefferson, anyone that knows UCLA like you three guys do, have seen what Anthony Jefferson's had to go through to get to where he is. I mean, that's a great story in itself. So, a little bit, but that's okay. And I don't think it bothers anybody. One of the true indicators to me about the personality of our team was last year when Miles started carrying the ball a lot. And we played 10 defensive players on offense. Well, you might expect that there would be a jealousy factor. Or wait a minute, Jordan Jameson, wait a minute, I'm the running back. And there was never any of that. It was always just complete encouragement for what can we do to be better as a football team. Does that mean Miles carries the ball? Great. Does that mean Eddie Vanderbilt catches it on 4th and 2 versus Arizona State? Great. That's what we do. Everyone's pulling together. So we got to keep that. We've got to keep that dynamic. That's really important.
how do you keep that dynamic, I guess?
You just constantly emphasize being selfless, and you don't allow any selfishness to permeate your environment. You nip it in the bud, you pay attention to it, you don't make exceptions. There are no sacred cows on our team. I mean, our best players are held to the exact same standard as our, less talented players. And I think you just have to be diligent about it all the time.
Does that kind of tie into the fact that, like you were saying before, you stayed here because you wanted to keep up those kind of lessons? I mean,
that's what's important to me right now. Yeah. And I think those are important lessons for our young men to learn. I think they're learning. Like I said, they're not perfect. I mean, we all make mistakes. And when you're dealing with 120, 17 to 22-year-olds, things are going to pop up on occasion. But they're getting it. And I think that's a credit to them and their families and our assistant coaches.
Just as long as those things don't pop up on the Pac-12 network, then it's fine.
Editorial. There you go.
Talk about recruiting. Recruited Jaleel Wadu out of St. Bosco, Speedy. What intrigues you about his talent when he brings his team?
Jaleel, first and foremost, is his character, as a person. I mean, he's just an amazing kid. And then second, his ability. He can play on both sides of the ball. He's dynamic as a playmaker on offense. He's fearless as a defensive back. He played safety. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he'll throw his body in there. I think he's very, very smart. I think he's serious about being a great person, player, student. He's just the kind of person that we want at our school. I love his dad. I think his dad has done an amazing job of raising him. Really good man. He just comes from the kind of background that I think is going to enhance our program.
Speaking of incoming freshmen, now that you've been around him in the summer program, who do you think might have some kind of impact in San Bernardino?
I haven't been around him much.
Heard some reports.
I've just through the grapevine, I've heard a couple of things. I've heard really great things about Alex Van Dyke. The players that I talk to, talking to Brett, talking to Eric, they keep talking about Alex Van Dyke. They keep talking about Nate Starks. They keep talking about Matt Dickerson. They all talk about Kenny Young. Certainly they know Zach Whitley and Najee and those guys that were there in the spring, but of the guys that weren't there in the spring, those are the names that keep coming up. And Jaleel, everybody loves those guys. And I think those are young men that could come in and potentially play. We won't have as many freshmen playing this year as we did last year. I think we have 18 or 19 last year. Hopefully we don't have as many. But there will be some that contribute, and those are some of the names that I'd look for.
Jim, talk about the growth of the program over the last 2 years, some of the milestones, where you were, where you are now.
Well, we're making progress. I think we're on the right track, but we're not where we want to be. Hopefully we keep the attitude that we're never where we want to be. But I'm excited about where we're going. I like the mindset of our team. I think that they get it. I don't think they're satisfied. They understand there's a whole lot out there that they still need to accomplish to really confirm that we are who we want to be. But I'm excited about the direction.
Jim, what do you got? Signs in the locker room, tune out the noise. Whose idea was that?
What now?
Tune out the noise. You've got these signs in the locker room.
Oh no, we just got just got a couple things on the just reminders. You've got to constantly. There's things you have to emphasize on a daily basis, and so we just have a couple like everybody does, a couple of sayings that we want them to see, visuals when they come in the locker room and leave the locker room. And they can probably recite them verbatim by now, and they probably never have read them, but subconsciously they probably absorb them all.
Jim, you talk about your partnership with the administration at UCLA. What's like some of the top things on the checklist of improvements you need around the program, facilities-wise, just logistical things that can make it easier for you to do your job?
Well, facilities, but we moved down that path. I mean, that's happening. That's a given. I mean, that's there's no coming back from that. We're going to have a brand new facility. I meet with the architects probably every couple of weeks. It's going to be an amazing facility, and then really just the continued support. Being able to keep coaches. Being able to provide the best environment for our student athletes to have success, feeding them. We already have great academic support, being able to continue along that path. I don't think that we're lacking really a whole lot at all. Once that facility is built, there are no excuses. There are no excuses.
Do you know Chris Peterson much?
No, I've met him twice. I think he's I know him from afar, from watching him. I have great respect for him. I've listened to him speak, obviously. I've seen his interviews. I went to University of Washington, and I'm really happy that they hired him. As a former Husky, I think he'll do a great job for the program I played in. And good man. I know he's a good man.
What's your reaction like when you've gone to places like Atlanta, back in the Southeast? Because for years, UCLA had a ton of success in the 70s and 80s, bringing kids out of that area. You obviously had experience in Atlanta. Is the recognition of the brand grown year by year as you guys have had success out here?
It has, but it's still hard to get kids out of that area.
Right.
But we're going to continue to recruit down there if we see somebody that we think fits our profile. But it's there's a lot of talent there. I mean, there's a great wealth of talent right here in California, and specifically Southern California. So that's always going to be our primary focus. But we're not going to be afraid to go down there and compete with the SEC team. Now, does it mean we're going to beat them a lot? No. I mean, it's hard to recruit down there. Those Southern kids, they grow up dreaming of playing at Alabama and Auburn and Tennessee and Ole Miss and LSU and those schools. And so to draw them away from that is not easy to do, but we're not going to shy away from it.
Coach, what has Eric Kendricks meant to your team? Obviously, he's coming up on this last year. How do you see him kind of projecting you forward as an NFL player?
Well, I think Eric, what's important is he has a really good senior year. He's had a great offseason. He did not go through spring because of his ankle, but that was more preventative than anything. Eric's a real leader for us in his own quiet way. He doesn't say a lot, and so when he does, it holds some weight. It's usually significant. He's an excellent football player. He's fast, he's quick, he's tenacious, and sideline to sideline type of guy. When we lost him last year, we really missed him. He's kind of the glue guy, without even saying a lot. He's kind of that guy that everyone wants to orbit around. And he's a sweetheart. I don't know if you've talked to him yet. It sounds really silly to call one of my players a sweetheart. But he's a sweetheart. Like if my daughter dated him and married him, I'd be fine with that. He's got nice hair.
Thank you. What did you make of the Brett Hundley campus enforcer video? I saw you were a part of that.
I was just a supporting actor. Brett was the star. I thought it was pretty funny. I thought Brett did a nice job. He and Luke Gain, who was one of our players last year, put that together, and I think the students really enjoyed it. And I think anytime you can kind of normalize Brett, humanize him, you watch around that campus and everyone looks at him. Remember the quarterback, when they get to know him, he's just Brett Hundley, he's just a good guy, and so he does a video like that, and I think, people see he doesn't take himself too seriously, and it's good for him.
Do you think Eric's been overshadowed a bit the last couple of years?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Anthony Barr is the reason for that, obviously, and that's understandable. Miles, but it's his time now, And what's great about Eric? I don't think that he cares that he's been overshadowed. I don't think that matters to him. That's not important to him. What's important to him is that he has an impact on the team, that the team has success, that his players, his teammates respect him. I don't think that Eric cares one bit whether or not, his name is in the highlight, in the headlines. I just don't think he's that type of person, and that's what you want out of your leaders. You want that selflessness, you want that team-first attitude, and that's what he embraces, and I love that about him.
Do you think it helps him in particular having Jeff as a coordinator now, who was an inside guy for so many years?
I think it helps our defense and our linebackers specifically because Jeff played that position at a high level. 10 years, one team in the NFL, that just doesn't happen much. And so, that speaks about Jeff's abilities, but it also speaks about the type of person he is. And so he's able to every day go in there and meet with these kids and kind of teach them lessons. I think it's really helping them. I think it's helping them off the field maybe more than on the field, and it certainly is helping them on the field. There's tricks, there's little tricks that you don't understand unless you played the position. It's little things that you got to learn. And Jeff wasn't the most talented guy in the world, but he created this little toolbox of tricks that helped him survive and really flourish for 10 years in the league.
You were in the NFL for a long time.